Hello, dear listeners. Today I invite you to journey with me into the enchanting world of fairy tales as I read you the story of Little Red Riding Hood, a tale that goes beyond childhood and speaks to us about trust, caution, and the love that ties generations together. Imagine sitting beside a crackling fire on a gentle evening, the soft rustle of trees in the background, as I open the pages of a picture book and tell you the story of a curious little girl, her devoted grandmother, and a cunning wolf deep in the woods. Once upon a time, in a quaint village bordered by an ancient, whispering forest, lived a young girl known to all as Little Red Riding Hood. She wasn't given this name at birth, of course, but soon the entire countryside called her nothing else because her grandmother, famed for her skill with needle and thread, had crafted for her a hooded cloak of the richest scarlet. The cloak became the girl's signature, bright as a poppy against the green fields and softly falling snow. Wherever she went, whether skipping down the lanes, running errands for her mother, or collecting wildflowers on summer afternoons, the red cloak glowed around her like a cheerful banner. Little Red Riding Hood was the embodiment of warmth and kindness, the sort of child who made friends with the butterflies in the field and always stopped to listen to an elderly neighbor's story. She lived in a humble cottage with her mother at the edge of the forest, the gentle border between village life and the wild, secret world beyond. Her grandmother's cottage was nestled on the far side of the woods, shaded by old oaks and ringed by fragrant rose bushes, a haven for birds and wild bees. The path between the two houses wound through towering trees, dappled with sunlight or shrouded in mist, depending on the mood of the day. One morning, as the sky blushed with the first light of dawn, Little Red Riding Hood's mother packed a wicker basket with freshly baked bread, a pot of strawberry jam, and a small pat of creamy butter. Grandmother wasn't well, her mother explained. She was a little frail, a touch feeble from her last cold, and nothing would cheer her more than a visit from her beloved granddaughter. Take this basket. Walk quickly and carefully along the path, dearest, her mother said. Speak to no strangers and don't stray from the trail. Trust in yourself, but remember, the forest is home to many creatures, some gentle, some less so. Little Red Riding Hood promised, her heart already shining with the thought of the happy surprise she would bring. She slipped her red cloak around her shoulders, its folds as familiar to her as her own heartbeat, and set off, the basket swinging in her hand. The early morning air was crisp, scented with pine and earthy moss. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees in golden shafts, painting mosaics of light and shadow on the winding path. As she walked, Little Red Riding Hood hummed softly, her song punctuated by birdsong and the delicate rustle of woodland creatures. She greeted a shy squirrel with a nod and gave a cheerful smile to the butterflies that danced from blossom to blossom. After some time, the forest started to feel deeper. The chatter of the village faded away, replaced by the mysterious silence of trees that had seen generations pass. Here, time seemed to slow. A person could feel very small and very alone. And it was here, in the cool blue-green shade, that Little Red Riding Hood met a stranger, a wolf. Now, this was not the sort of wolf from ordinary stories where you could see danger at first glance. His fur was sleek, his eyes intelligent, and his voice, when he spoke, was smooth as river stones. "Good morning, little girl," he greeted, his smile both fascinating and vaguely unsettling. "What brings you so deep into the woods on this fine day, with such a beautiful cloak?" Remembering her mother's warning, Little Red Riding Hood hesitated. But the wolf's tone was gracious, almost fatherly, and after all, hadn't her mother taught her to be polite? "I'm going to see my grandmother," she explained. "She's not feeling well, so I'm bringing her this basket of bread and jam." The wolf's ears pricked with interest. "Is your grandmother's cottage very far?" he inquired, casually, as if discussing the weather. "No, just a little further along this path," Little Red Riding Hood replied honestly. "It's beneath the 3 huge oak trees, just past the bramble thicket." The wolf's mind worked quickly, with the kind of clever malice that a life in the woods often breeds. He saw not just a little girl, but a tempting opportunity. Still, he masked his intent with charm. "How lovely," he said. "Such care for your family. Your grandmother will be overjoyed. But look around you, aren't the wood anemones magnificent this time of year? And over there, look at those clusters of wild violets. Surely your grandmother would appreciate a fresh bouquet to brighten her day." Little Red Riding Hood, who did love flowers and the surprise of finding them tucked between pages in her books when summer faded into autumn, considered the wolf's suggestion. It seemed kind, and she imagined her grandmother smile. So, she thanked the wolf and stepped off the path to collect a handful of the prettiest blooms. The wolf, meanwhile, wasted no time. He darted away, paws quiet on the moss, following the main trail as only a forest animal could. Faster than the breeze, and with his mind sharp on his plan, he soon came upon the grandmother's cottage, whitewashed and cozy, rose bushes blooming along the front. He knocked politely at the door. Inside, grandmother called out, "Who is it?" Her voice was soft, weak from illness. The wolf pressed his muzzle closer to the door and managed a passable imitation of his new acquaintance's high, sweet voice. "It's me, grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood. I've brought you some bread and jam from mother." The old lady, delighted but weary, bade her in, and before she realized her mistake, the wolf pounced. He did not harm her but instead locked her safely in the wardrobe, out of sight and unable to call for help. Then, he found her nightcap and glasses, wrapped himself in her patchwork quilt, and settled into her bed to await the girl's arrival. Sometime later, Little Red Riding Hood strode through the forest, her basket now filled not just with food, but with flowers of every color. She'd forgotten the warning not to leave the path, absorbed in her mission and the beauty around her. Eventually, she reached the familiar clearing and saw the cottage, the door slightly ajar. She knocked softly. "Grandmother?" she called, stepping inside. A thin, scratchy voice answered from the bed. "Come in, dear." The room was dim, the curtains drawn to block the glare of midday sun. As Little Red Riding Hood approached, something felt off. Her grandmother looked almost herself, but not quite. The cap was pulled low over her face, and her hands seemed larger than she remembered, resting on top of the covers. "Grandmother, what big ears you have," Little Red Riding Hood observed, puzzled but not yet afraid. "All the better to hear you with, my child," answered the disguised wolf, trying to mimic the grandmother's warmth. "And grandmother, what big eyes you have," she continued, peering closer. "All the better to see you with, my dear," replied the wolf, his eyes watching her hungrily. "Grandmother, what big hands you have," Little Red Riding Hood said, taking a step back. "All the better to hug you with, my dear," the wolf replied, a strange glint in his eye. Finally, Little Red Riding Hood noticed the grin, sharp and wide and not at all grandmotherly. "Grandmother, what big teeth you have." "All the better to eat you with," shouted the wolf, leaping up from the bed. In that terrifying moment, Little Red Riding Hood realized her peril. She ran to the door screaming for help, but the wolf was fast, and the woods, for all their beauty, were very far from help. Yet fate had not abandoned her, for just then, out gathering wood, a passing woodcutter overheard her cries. He dashed into the cottage, axe in hand. At the sight of the woodcutter, the wolf forgot his disguise and tried to escape. With one swift movement, the brave woodcutter chased the beast away, out of the house and deep into the woods, where he would never trouble that village again. The woodcutter then rescued the trembling grandmother from the wardrobe. After the danger was gone, Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother embraced, their tears falling into smiles. The woodcutter, having ensured their safety, sat with them at the kitchen table. They shared the bread and strawberry jam, grateful for second chances in the simple peace of being together. As they ate, Little Red Riding Hood thought about the day's events, the trust she'd given too easily to a clever stranger, the danger of forgetting to listen to those who cared for her, and the fortune of being saved by another's kindness and bravery. That evening, when her mother arrived in worry, Little Red Riding Hood told her everything. "Mother, I am sorry I didn't stay on the path or follow your words. I was distracted by beauty and trust, but I see now how important it is to be careful and wise." Her mother hugged her, relieved. "You are safe, my darling, and you've learned a lesson that many take a lifetime to understand." Little Red Riding Hood promised to always remember the lesson. She would be curious, yes, but also cautious. She would listen to her heart, but also the wise voices who loved her. And she would always, always wear her red cloak, not just to stand out, but to remind herself of the family who cared for her and the courage she found that day in the woods. And as night settled over the forest and village, Little Red Riding Hood's story became a tale told by mothers and grandmothers to new generations, a reminder to watch for wolves in disguise, to walk with care, and to trust the wisdom of those who love us most. So remember, dear listeners, as you move through the world with wonder, keep your eyes open, your heart kind, and your steps steady. And if ever your path brings you to the edge of a deep forest, wear your red cloak proudly, greet the world with warmth, but always, always keep your wits about you. Thank you for joining me for the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Until next time, take care and may your journeys be safe and full of light.